Thank you. I am both a town mouse and a country mouse. My mother comes from the city and my father from the countryside. Who knows, who remembers the fable, the town mouse and the country mouse? If you do, it's still learned in school, but actually it was a story written for adults 350 years ago by Jean de La Fontaine. And it finds its root in a story dated back from 600 years before Christ. Basically, for the one who didn't have the opportunity to learn it, it's about a proud rat from the city who invites his cousin from the countryside, a humble cousin, for a taste of the city life on a quite eccentric dinner. But a big cat interrupts the dinner, and they are forced to leave their meal and retreat in a hole to save their lives. Then the town mouse tells his cousin that the big cat has already killed his father and mother and is constantly threatening him. So the country mouse decides wisely to go back to his safe home in the countryside and prefers security to opulence. I grew up in the countryside with my grandfather living next to us. My grandfather was, like his father and grandfather, a cheesemaker. He would purchase milk from nearby farms, would turn it into cheese. The cheese leftovers, together with my grandmother's garden leftovers, she was exploiting a very large garden, would be used to feed pigs. And the pig's manure would be used in turn to fertilize my grandmother's garden. No waste. Pure circular model. Everything was turned into tasty food, pork meat, and as you all know, all is good in pig. Pig, potentially the best waste management device ever imagined by nature. All was fine. Flourishing business. My father started to work for my grandfather, and my mother became the CFO. She was a chartered accountant. She became the CFO of the family business when she got married with my father and moved over from the city. So all was fine up until the moment that the milk cooperative was established in the region. And then the cheese of my grandfather became too expensive and eventually stopped his business and retired. My father started to work for the milk cooperative and then was advised to start a new type of business, an intensive egg production business. I remember I was 6-7 years old at that time. He would receive thousands of grown-up hens, place them into cages by a group of 6-7. And you know, I was a child, very curious, constantly asking questions. And I would ask him, Dad, what do you have in those big bags? And he would tell me, it's soya beans. It's food for the chicken. It doesn't look tasty. It was smelling. It was really not looking like good food. And then I would ask him, why do they have their beak trimmed off? And he would tell me, you know, they get injured in the cages. And what that? It's antibiotics. They get sick quite often and they need treatment. And after several months of loyal egg laying, they would be taken away in a truck and replaced by new hens. And this time I remember the question was for my mother. I said, Mommy, what's happening to the hens? Do we eat them? And I remember she would reply to me quite elusively, you know, they are too skinny. Their legs are distorted. No butcher would want to purchase them. Nobody would want to eat them. they have no value anymore. We give them away to the knacker. And this just didn't make sense to the little girl I then was. And I remember how relieved I was to spend my holidays in the city with my maternal grandmother, enjoying the convenience, the elegance of the city life. I mean, shopping in department stores, buying food on city markets. It was so much nicer. And at that time, I profoundly disliked the country life. This take-make-waste model, no value anymore, pure take-make-waste model, has become, over the years, the prevailing model of our food system, a take-make-waste approach. And our global food system is based on 3 reinforcing mechanisms. A reduced portfolio of 3 types of meat, 4 types of crops. 3 types of meat, pork, chicken, beef. 4 types of crop, wheat, corn, rice for human consumption, plus soya, mainly for animal consumption. Then a set of intensive production practices. At large scale, fast. As fast as you can produce food, the better. And then a mechanism of high volumes, low price. Those reinforcing mechanisms are applied in silos on each type of food. And there is no symbiosis anymore between plant and animals. And moreover, those reinforcing mechanism creates accelerating loops and exponential trends over time, negative and positive. On the positive side, exponential economic growth and prosperity, unfortunately unevenly distributed over the world, but many negative trends. Exponential loss of biodiversity, because farmers across the world have stopped growing their local varieties to favor high-yielding crops. Also, loss of nearly 30% of local breeds over time. Exponential loss in terms of agricultural jobs. In the 60s, 40% of the total US population was working on farms. Today, it's just 1%. And also, then exponential increase in terms of greenhouse gas emission, in terms of water and soil depletion, in terms of deforestation, pollution, and moreover, negative trends in terms of health. Resistance to antibiotics is increasing within human beings, human and animal population. Increases in diseases, respiratory diseases in particular. And moreover, increase in the level of obesity across the world, mainly within children. Today, more people die of over and malnutrition than of undernutrition. In 2019, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has assessed the social and environmental impact of our food system. And she found that for $1 spent on food, $2 are incurred in terms of social and environmental costs. And those dollars will only increase because of those trending loops, those accelerations, those exponential trends. Moreover, this system is incredibly wasteful. 1/3 of the food produced worldwide is lost or wasted. So today, actually, we grow enough food for 10 billion people. And you may remember the motto from the agri-food and agrochemical industries. We need to feed 10 billion people by 2050. This doesn't hold. We already grow enough food for 10 billion people. Moreover, the system is really heating up. It's largely contributing to climate change and global warming. And it actually impacting the human and natural systems it relies on. And this creates major issues in terms of resilience to increasing climate change, extreme climate change events, but also in terms of food security. During the last decades, the price of food has constantly decreased. But the price of food is expected to increase in the coming decades, mainly because of climate change. And this will create major bone of contention on a geopolitical point of view. Recently, you may have heard, Brazil decided to limit its export of soya in order to protect its national economy. So what can we do? How can we cool down the system? Can we find less is more, reversing loops, reversing dynamics for food produced less globally and less intensively? Few global companies contribute and benefit from the global food system. So they have the power to generate those counterbalancing loops and bend the exponential trends. They have the power to do that by radically changing their business model. We all have heard that. We need to radically change the business model. But there are two major roadblocks. First, what I learned from 20 years of professional experience working with large business corporations, working with top executives, helping them actually by managing large business process reengineering projects for them, aimed at improving their efficiency and improving their profitability. What I learned and was actually confirmed by 5 years of doctoral studies on corporate strategies for sustainable development is that firms' business model act as a blinder. Large companies see the world through the lens of their business model. And they would only accept changes if they fit in their business model. So more recently, some of those companies have been investigating technologies and innovation to produce plant-based substitutes to meat, or to even produce lab-grown meat. You may have heard that recently. Those are options actually which are aimed at or pushing further the intensive practices, or aimed at shifting to other intensive practices. Those two examples are potentially two examples of new intensive practices. So what can we do? Can we oblige them through regulation to change their business model? Another roadblock. Those companies are multi-billion companies, 40, 50 plus billion revenue company on a yearly basis. They are larger than many national economies in GDP-wise. So regulating their business model would require international regulation. And recently, the COP26 has shown us how difficult it is to establish international regulation. So what can we do? How to cool our global food system down? There is one core tenet It's work on the system, not in the system. It's about creating dynamics in order to inverse the trends. And the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is providing in a report food on the cities on the circular economy for food, an approach which has the potential to work on the system. And it's about using cities as hub for a circular economy for food. And the rationale is that by 2050, 80% of the food consumed worldwide will be consumed in cities. And actually, 40% of the cropland worldwide can be found in a 20-kilometer radius around cities. And moreover, cities are huge stakeholders because they find themselves at the end of the production-consumption continuum, and they are left with the responsibility to manage waste, and they bear the cost of managing waste, and food waste in particular. So the idea is to reconnect cities with the countryside and have cities using their power demand for food in order to influence the way food is produced and consumed. So we could then envision cities where retailers, department stores, groceries, restaurants, hospitals would primarily source food locally and generatively produced. And by generative, we mean produce, grown while taking care of the soils, while avoiding exhausting soils. We could then also imagine that cities would push forward as a complement, their urban farming practices, may develop at scale structures in order to create and exploit large collective gardens, or install and manage solar-powered greenhouses, and install them in gardens, on rooftops, on terraces, balconies. Many solutions exist in different shapes, even vertical greenhouses which could be installed on your balcony, and you'll be able to grow food. And the last aspect, cities may also push forward and go beyond just reducing waste by establishing structures which would collect at large scale unsold food and food leftovers and reprocess that food into meals, into canned food, into juice, you name it, and resell that reprocessed food or give it to people in need for greater social purpose. So structures managed at large scale will not only create jobs, but also have the potential to positively impact on a social, educational, and civic point of view. So basically, it's about keeping the value of food for as long as possible, one of the core principles of the circular economy, which is not only waste, actually, it's everything except waste. It's about avoiding waste at the first place. So basically, it's really about reuniting, about connecting cities back to nature on the countryside. Actually, if we reread the fable, from Jean de La Fontaine in today's context, we may see the big cat as being climate change and global warming. We may actually even see it as being the pandemics we are going through today. Unlike the country mouse wisely decide to go back to his home in the countryside, we may wisely consider less local and more regenerative food production practices. By reuniting the town mouse with the country mouse, we may actually be able to work on the system and produce food less globally, less intensively, for a more secure, for a more resilient, and a more healthy food system. Thank you.